Crowley, doing 110 miles an hour on the M40 towards Oxfordshire. Even the most resolutely casual observer would notice a number of strange things about him. The clenched teeth, for example, or the dull red glow coming from behind his sunglasses, and the car. The car was a definite hint. Crowley had started the journey in his Bentley, and he was damned if he wasn't going to finish it in the Bentley as well. Not even the kind of car buff who owns his own pair of motoring goggles would have been able to tell that it was a vintage Bentley. Not anymore. They wouldn't have been able to tell that it was a Bentley. They would only offer 50-50 that it had ever been a car. There was no paint left on it, for a start. It might still have been black, where it wasn't a rusty smudged reddish brown, but this was a dull charcoal black. It travelled in its own ball of flame, like a space capsule making a particularly difficult re-entry. There was a thin skin of crusted, melted rubber left around the metal wheel rims, but seeing that the wheel rims were still, somehow, riding an inch above the road surface, this didn't seem to make an awful lot of difference to the suspension. It should have fallen apart miles back. It was the effort of holding it together that was causing Crowley to grit his teeth, and the biospatial feedback that was causing the bright red eyes. That, and the effort of having to remember not to start breathing. He hadn't felt like this since the 14th century. The atmosphere in the quarry was friendlier now, but still intense. "You've got to help me sort it out," said Adam. "People have been trying to sort it out for thousands of years, but we've got to sort it out now." They nodded helpfully. "You see, the thing is," said Adam, "the thing is, it's like, well, you know Greasy Johnson?" The them nodded. They all knew Greasy Johnson, and the members of the other gang in Lower Tadfield. They were older and not very pleasant. Hardly a week went by without a skirmish. "Well," said Adam, "we always win, right?" "Nearly always," said Wensleydale. "Nearly always," said Adam. "And more than half, anyway," said Pepper. "'Cause you remember when there was all that fuss about the old folks' party in the village hall, when we... Well, that doesn't count," said Adam. "They got told off just as much as us. Anyway, old folks are supposed to like listening to the sound of children playing. I remember that somewhere. I don't see why we should get told off because we've got the wrong kind of old folks." He paused. "Anyway, we're better than them." "Oh, we're better than them," said Pepper. "You're right about that. We're better than them, all right. We just don't always win." "Just suppose," said Adam slowly, "that we could beat 'em properly. Get 'em sent away or something. Just make sure there's no more other gangs in Lower Tadfield apart from us. What do you think about that?" "What, you mean he'd be dead?" said Brian. "No, just gone away." The them thought about this. Greasy Johnson had been a fact of life since they'd been old enough to hit one another with a toy railway engine. They tried to get their minds around the concept of a world with a Johnson-shaped hole in it. Brian scratched his nose. "I reckon it'd be brilliant without Greasy Johnson," he said. "Remember what he did at my birthday party, and I got in trouble about it." "I dunno," said Pepper. "I mean, it wouldn't be so interesting without Greasy Johnson and his gang. When you think about it, we've had lots of fun with old Greasy Johnson and the Johnsonites. We'd probably have to find some other gang or something." "Seems to me," said Wensleydale, "that if you asked people in Lower Tadfield, they'd say they'd be better off without either the Johnsonites or the them." Even Adam looked shocked at this. Wensleydale went on stoically. "The old folks' club would, and Picky, and... But we're the good ones," Brian began. He hesitated. "Well, all right," he said, "but I bet they'd think it'd be a jolly sight less interesting if we all weren't here." "Yes," said Wensleydale, "that's what I mean. People around here don't want us or the Johnsonites," he went on morosely. "The way they're always going on about us just riding our bikes or skateboarding on their pavements and making too much noise and stuff. It's like the man said in the history books, a plaque on both your houses." This met with silence. One of those blue ones, said Brian eventually, saying Adam Young lived here or something. Normally an opening like this could lead to 5 minutes of rambling discussion when the them were in the mood, but Adam felt this was not the time. What you're all saying, he summed up in his best chairman tones, is that it wouldn't be any good at all if Greasy Johnson beat the them or the other way round. That's right, said Pepper, because, she added, if we beat them, we won't have to be our own deadly enemies. It'd be me and Adam against Brian and Wensley. She sat back. Everyone needs a Greasy Johnson, she said. Yeah, said Adam. That's what I thought. It's no good anyone winning. That's what I thought. He stared at Dog, or through Dog. Seems simple enough to me, said Wensleydale, sitting back. I don't see why it's taken thousands of years to sort out. That's because the people trying to sort it out were men, said Pepper. I don't see why you have to take sides, said Wensleydale. Of course I have to take sides, said Pepper. Everyone has to take sides in something. Adam appeared to reach a decision. Yes, but I reckon you can make your own side. I think you'd better go and get your bikes, he said quietly. I think we'd better go and talk to some people. Put, went Madame Tracy's motor scooter down Crouch End High Street. It was the only vehicle moving on a suburban London street jammed with immovable cars and taxis and red London buses. I've never seen a traffic jam like it, said Madame Tracy. I wonder if there's been an accident. Quite possibly, said Aziraphale. And then, Mr. Shadwell, unless you put your arms around me, you're going to fall off. This thing wasn't built for 2 people, you know. 3, muttered Shadwell, gripping the seat with one white-knuckled hand and his thunder gun with the other. Mr. Shadwell, I won't tell you again. Well, you'll have to stop then so I can adjust my weapon, sighed Shadwell. Madame Tracy giggled dutifully, but she pulled over to the curb and stopped the motor scooter. Shadwell sorted himself out and put 2 grudging arms around Madame Tracy while the thunder gun stuck up between them like a chaperone. They rode through the rain without talking for another 10 minutes. Put, as Madame Tracy carefully negotiated her way around the cars and buses. Madame Tracy found her eyes being moved down to the speedometer, rather foolishly, she thought, since it hadn't worked since 1974, and it hadn't worked very well before that. Dear lady, how fast would you say we are going? Asked Aziraphale. Why? Because it seems to me that we would go slightly faster walking. Well, with just me on, the top speed is about 15 miles an hour, but with Mr. Shadwell as well, it must be, 4 or 5 miles per hour, she interrupted. Well, yes, I suppose so, she agreed. There was a cough from behind her. Can you no slow down this hellish machine, woman? Said an ashen voice. In the infernal pantheon, which it goes without saying Shadwell hated uniformly and correctly, Shadwell reserved a certain loathing for speed demons. In which case, said Aziraphale, we will get to Tadfield in something less than 10 hours. There was a pause from Madame Tracy, then, how far away is this Tadfield then? About 40 miles. Oh, said Madame Tracy, who had once driven the scooter the few miles to nearby Finchley to visit her niece, but had taken the bus since because of the funny noises the scooter had started making on the way back. We should really be going about 70 if we're going to get there in time, said Aziraphale. Sergeant Shadwell, hold on very tightly now. Put, and a blue nimbus began to outline the scooter and its occupants with a gentle sort of glow like an after-image all around them. Put, and the scooter lifted awkwardly off the ground with no visible means of support, jerking slightly until it reached the height of 5 feet or more. Don't look down, Sergeant Shadwell, advised Aziraphale. Said Shadwell, eyes screwed tightly shut, grey forehead beaded with sweat, not looking down, not looking anywhere. And off we go then. In every big budget science fiction movie, there's a moment where a spaceship as large as New York suddenly goes to light speed. A twanging noise like a wooden ruler being plucked over the edge of a desk, a dazzling refraction of light, and suddenly the stars have all been stretched out thin and it's gone. This was exactly like that. Except, instead of a gleaming 12-mile-long spaceship, it was an off-white 20-year-old motor scooter. And you didn't have the special effects rainbow, and it probably wasn't going more than 200 miles an hour. And instead of a pulsing whine sliding up the octaves, it just went put, whoosh. But it was exactly like that anyway. Where the M25, a now screaming frozen circle, intersects with the M40 to Oxfordshire, police were clustered around in ever-increasing quantities. Since Crowley crossed the divide half an hour earlier, their number had doubled. On the M40 side anyway, no one in London was getting out. In addition to the police, there were also approximately 200 others standing around, inspecting the M25 through binoculars. They included representatives from Her Majesty's Army, the Bomb Disposal Squad, MI5, MI6, the Special Branch and the CIA. There was also a man selling hot dogs. Everybody was cold and wet and puzzled and irritable, with the exception of one police officer who was cold, wet, puzzled, irritable and exasperated. Look, I don't care if you believe me or not, he sighed. All I'm telling you is what I saw. It was an old car, a Rolls or a Bentley, one of those flash vintage jobs, and it made it over the bridge. One of the senior army technicians interrupted. It can't have done. According to our instruments, the temperature above the M25 is somewhere in excess of 700 degrees centigrade. Or 140 degrees below, added her assistant. Or 140 degrees below, agreed the senior technician. There does appear to be some confusion on that score, although I think we can safely attribute to a mathematical error of some kind. But the fact remains that we can't even get a helicopter above the M25 without winding up with helicopter McNuggets. How on earth can you tell me that a vintage car drove over it unharmed? I didn't say it drove over it unharmed, corrected the policeman, who was thinking seriously about leaving the Metropolitan Police and going into business with his brother, who was resigning his job with the Electricity Board and was going to start breeding chickens. It burst into flames. It just kept on going. Do you seriously expect any of us to believe? Began somebody. Then a high-pitched keening noise, haunting and strange, like 1,000 glass harmonicas all being played in unison, all slightly off-key, like the sound of molecules of air itself wailing in pain, and whoosh! Over their heads it sailed, 40 feet in the air, engulfed in a deep blue nimbus which faded to red at the edges, a little white motor scooter, and riding it, a middle-aged woman in a pink helmet. Clutching tightly to her was a short man in a Macintosh and a green Dayglow crash helmet. The motor scooter was far too far up for anyone to see that his eyes were tightly shut, but they were. And the woman was screaming. What she was screaming was this. Geronimo!